What if I told you that the scariest things are not the things we see with our eyes, but the things we can't? What if the scariest thing is what lies in wait for us, just beyond the edge of our vision, just beyond our reach? Something waiting for the right moment to pounce, to pull us into the darkness. Would you still want to know the truth? Or would you rather turn away and pretend the world is safe? Because if you think you're ready for what I'm about to tell you, well, I promise it will be a story that won't let you sleep tonight. You see, I wasn't always the man I am now. A private investigator working cases no one else dared to touch. No, years ago I was just like you. Curious, wanting to understand, wanting to find the truth. But there are things in this world, things better left unknown. This story starts in a small, quiet town in the middle of nowhere. A town like any other, where everyone knew everyone else's business. But there was a house on the outskirts, a house that no one dared talk about, a house with a history and not a good one. I didn't know much about it at first, just that it had been abandoned for years. It sat at the end of a long, winding road, half hidden by trees. No one lived there, at least. That's what they said. But one night, I got a call. A woman was missing. Her name was Rachel, and her husband, Thomas, hadn't seen her for 3 days. The police didn't know what to make of it, but there was one thing that stood out. Rachel had disappeared without a trace. Her phone, found on the kitchen counter. Her car, sitting in the driveway. She was gone. And that's when the story really began. When I arrived at the house, I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like the air itself was heavy. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was just nerves, but there was something about this place, something wrong. I knocked on the door, no answer. I tried again, still nothing. Finally, I decided to step inside. The door creaked open, and I was hit with the unmistakable scent of rotting food and old wood. The house was eerily silent, too silent. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" But my voice seemed to be swallowed by the darkness. I walked through the hallway, each step feeling like it echoed through the walls, and I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. I made my way to the living room, where the furniture was covered in dust. There were signs of life, though, footprints in the dust, a half-drunk cup of coffee on the table, and a stack of papers scattered on the floor. That's when I found it. A note, half hidden under the pile. I picked it up. It was written in red ink, a single sentence. "They're always watching. You're next." I froze. I don't know why I didn't turn around and leave right then. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe I thought I was just being paranoid. But something in my gut told me to keep going. So I did. I went upstairs. The stairs creaked under my weight, groaning as if they were protesting my presence. The air was even thicker up there. It was hard to breathe, like the house was suffocating me. The first door I opened led to a bedroom. Rachel's bedroom. The bed was perfectly made, but the closet door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and my blood ran cold. The closet was empty except for one thing, a mirror. It wasn't just any mirror. It was large, standing against the wall, framed in dark wood. And there, in the reflection, I saw her, Rachel. But she wasn't just standing there. She was staring back at me. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking, as if she was waiting. I blinked. She was gone. I stepped back, my heart pounding, but I couldn't stop myself from looking into the mirror again. This time, there was no one there. The reflection was empty. But then, I heard something. A thud from below, followed by a slow, dragging sound. Like someone was moving through the house, and they were getting closer. I spun around. Nothing. The hallway was still empty. I moved to the stairs, my heart racing. And then, I saw it. A figure. A woman standing at the bottom of the staircase, facing away from me. Her hair was wild, tangled, and her clothes were torn. But what terrified me the most were her hands. Her hands were covered in blood. I called out to her, but she didn't move. I started walking down the stairs, but the closer I got, the heavier the air became. I felt like I was suffocating. The woman didn't look up. She just stood there, her head tilted slightly, as if listening. And then she turned around. And her face was familiar, but it wasn't Rachel's. It was someone else. A woman who had been in the papers years ago. A woman who had disappeared without a trace. Before I could even react, I heard a voice. A low, guttural whisper that made my blood run cold. "You shouldn't have come. You should have stayed away. Because now you belong to her." I don't remember how I got out of that house. But the next thing I knew, I was sitting in my car, hands shaking, staring at the house from a distance. I was terrified, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of it. There was something about that house, something that wasn't just haunting, it was something alive. And then I found the files, the old case files about the house, about Rachel, and about the woman who had vanished years before. The files said she had been murdered, and her body was never found. But what they didn't say was that she had been buried inside the walls of the house, the same walls that trapped Rachel. And if you think that's scary enough, if you didn't get scared of this story, then you need to hear the next one, the one that won't let you sleep. If you're brave enough, the next story is waiting for you. But be careful, because once you hear it, you might never look at your reflection the same way again. Dare to watch the next story? If you do, make sure you lock your doors, because there's nowhere to hide. Imagine this. You've always dreamed of visiting Paris. The city of love, they call it. The lights, the romance, the feeling that nothing bad could ever happen there. But sometimes, the darkest secrets are hidden in the most beautiful places. What if I told you that behind the glamour of Paris, behind the magic of that city, there lies a horrible truth waiting to claim anyone who dares to enter? A truth that's been hidden for years. Are you ready for this? It all started with a couple who thought they were in for the perfect honeymoon. Paris was supposed to be the most magical place, the most romantic escape from the world. They were young, excited, and full of life, just like anyone would be on their honeymoon. But they had no idea that the hotel they'd chosen, the room they'd been given, would turn their dream into a nightmare. It was room 98. Now, you may be wondering, what's so special about room 98? Well, that's where things start to get strange. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It was a typical hotel room, furnished with all the usual amenities, a bed, a dresser, a mirror in the corner. The view of the Eiffel Tower lit up at night was enough to make them feel like they were in paradise. But there was something about this room. It wasn't the decor, or the view, or even the slightly musty smell in the air. It was the feeling, that suffocating, almost stale air that seemed to make the room feel colder than it should be. Something about the atmosphere made them uneasy, but, of course, they shrugged it off. It was just the excitement of being in Paris, right? They settled in for the night, laughing, talking, cuddling up in the bed. But then, around midnight, things started to change. Sarah, she couldn't sleep. She kept hearing strange sounds. It wasn't the typical hotel noise. Number this was different. A scratching sound, a low scraping, like nails on wood. It was coming from the walls? She tried to ignore it, told herself it was nothing. But then, there was a whisper, a faint sound so soft it could have been her imagination. "Help me!" Her heart raced. She turned to Jack, but he was already asleep, his breathing steady. Was she just hearing things? She sat up, eyes scanning the dark room. The clock ticked, the only sound filling the silence. But then the whisper came again. "Help me!" She grabbed Jack's arm, shaking him awake. But before she could speak, the air in the room grew even colder. She felt it, something hovering over her, a cold breath on her neck. "Jack, do you hear that?" she whispered. Jack opened his eyes, but before he could answer, the lights flickered. The room was suddenly too quiet, too still. And that's when the mirror in the corner caught her attention. It wasn't just reflecting the room, it was reflecting something else, a shadow. It moved across the mirror, but when she turned to look, there was nothing there, nothing at all. Her breath caught in her throat. Jack noticed her stare. He rubbed his eyes, thinking it was the light playing tricks. But when he looked again, he saw it too. The shadow in the mirror was moving. It was alive. Jack bolted up, panic setting in. He rushed to the window, opening it, but the cold air did nothing to help. Something wasn't right. Something was inside the room with them. The whisper came again, louder now, closer. "Help me. I'm still here." Jack looked at Sarah, his voice shaking. "We need to get out of here. Now!" But when he reached for the door, it wouldn't open. He pulled the handle again, and again, but the door was locked. No, it wasn't just locked, it was sealed shut. Panic gripped them both. Sarah felt her heart racing in her chest, and Jack, breathing heavily, kept slamming his shoulder into the door, trying to break it down. Then they heard the footsteps. At first, it was just a faint noise, but as it got louder, the footsteps seemed to be coming closer. And then, the voice. It wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a deep, guttural voice that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "You're not leaving." Suddenly, the temperature in the room plummeted. Sarah could see her breath in the air, thick and white. The lights flickered again, this time more violently. Jack's panic turned to full-fledged terror. He kept yelling, "We need to get out! Now!" But the walls pressed in. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Then the mirror cracked. A single thin crack running down the middle. And that's when they saw it. In the reflection of the cracked mirror, a woman appeared. A woman with hollow eyes, blood running down her face, and a twisted, terrifying smile. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Then, Sarah saw something even worse. The woman's reflection stepped forward, out of the mirror. She was right there, in the room with them. Jack tried to grab Sarah, pulling her away from the mirror, but it was too late. The woman lunged at them, her hands outstretched. The room went dark. When the lights came back on, Sarah was alone. Jack was gone. In the days that followed, the authorities were called, but they found nothing. No trace of Jack. No trace of Sarah. The hotel, though, it had a story to tell. Room 98 was once a place where a couple stayed, just like them. They checked in, just like Sarah and Jack, and something in that room snapped. The husband, out of rage, killed his wife in the most brutal way, and then, in his madness, he took his own life. But the curse didn't stop there. It clung to that room, waiting for the next couple to walk in and fall victim to its twisted hold. Sarah and Jack weren't the first, and they won't be the last. If you haven't already, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for the scariest and most nightmarish true crime stories you'll ever experience. You don't want to miss what's coming next? Trust me. And if you haven't watched these 2 videos yet, you're missing out on an experience that will haunt your dreams. Go ahead, dive into the darkness. But be warned, they might just give you nightmares you'll never forget. I'll see you in the next horror story. If you dare,